There was a time when music could stop a room, when a voice coming through a tiny radio speaker made teenagers forget everything around them. These were the men and women who created that feeling from nothing. Tonight, we visit the final resting places of the legends who started it all. Some of these graves will surprise you. Let's begin. Elvis Presley. Before anyone else, there was Elvis, the boy from Tupelo, Mississippi, who walked into Sun Studio in 1954 and changed the direction of music forever. Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock. He did not just sing songs. He created a whole new way of being alive. Elvis Presley rests at Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee, in the garden he loved during his lifetime. Over 600,000 fans visit every single year, making it the most visited musical grave on the entire planet. Buddy Holly. Most artists spend a lifetime building a legacy. Buddy Holly did it in 18 months. That'll be the day. Peddi Sue. Every day. Songs so perfectly written that the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and Bob Dylan all named him as the reason they picked up a guitar. On February 3, 1959, his plane went down in an Iowa cornfield at just 22 years old. Buddy Holly rests at the city of Lubbock Cemetery in his hometown of Lubbock, Texas, beneath a headstone carved with a guitar. Fans still leave guitar picks there to this day. Ritchie Valens. He was 17 years old. 17. And he had already recorded La Bamba, a centuries-old Mexican folk song that he electrified and handed to the world like a gift. Ritchie Valens was the first Latino rock and roll star, and he was just getting started. He died in the same plane crash as Buddy Holly on that February night in 1959. Ritchie Valens rests at San Fernando Mission Cemetery in Mission Hills, California, close to the community in the San Fernando Valley that raised him and never stopped loving him. The Big Bopper. The moment he sang Hello, Baby on Chantilly Lace, every teenager in America knew exactly who he was. J.P. Richardson, known to the world as the Big Bopper, had one of the most infectious personalities rock and roll had ever seen. Funny, charismatic, larger than life in every sense of the phrase. He died alongside Buddy Holly and Ritchie Valens in the 1959 plane crash that Don McLean would later call the day the music died. The Big Bopper rests at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Beaumont, Texas, not far from where he grew up. Little Richard. Here is something worth saying out loud. Without Little Richard, there is no Elvis, no Beatles, no James Brown, no Prince. He invented the sound, the energy, the screaming piano, the showmanship, the entire spectacle of rock and roll performance. Good golly, Miss Molly. Tutti Frutti. Long Tall Sally. He was a force of nature wrapped in a sequin suit. Little Richard passed away in 2020 at 87 years old. He rests at Oakwood Memorial Gardens in Huntsville, Alabama, on the campus of the very university he once attended as a young man searching for his calling. Chuck Berry. If you have ever watched a guitarist duck walk across a stage, you have Chuck Berry to thank for it. Johnny B. Good. Maybelline. Roll over Beethoven. He was the poet of rock and roll, writing stories about teenagers, cars, and freedom that captured a generation perfectly. John Lennon once said, if you try to give rock and roll another name, you might call it Chuck Berry. He rests in a family mausoleum at Bellerive Gardens Cemetery in St. Louis, Missouri. And here is a detail you will love. The door handle of his crypt is shaped like a guitar. Jerry Lee Lewis. There has never been anyone quite like Jerry Lee Lewis, and there never will be again. The man sat down at a piano and turned it into a weapon of pure joy. Great balls of fire. Whole lotta shaking going on. He played with his feet, his elbows, and his entire soul. He was the wildest man in a room full of wild men. Jerry Lee Lewis lived to 87 years old and never once slowed down. He rests on the private grounds of his own home in Nesbitt, Mississippi, the land he loved more than any stage in the world. Fats Domino. He sold over 65 million records, and most people could not even tell you his biggest hits by name. They just knew them in their bones. I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill. Ain't that a shame? Walking to New Orleans. Fats Domino was the gentle giant of rock and roll, a man whose rolling piano style became the heartbeat of an entire city. He rests in a private cemetery in New Orleans, Louisiana, the city that made him, the city that mourned him, and the city that still plays his music every single day. Roy Orbison. Stay with this one for a moment because it is remarkable. Roy Orbison stood completely still on stage and made audiences weep. No dancing, no somansip. Just that voice, a 3-octave instrument of pure emotional devastation. Oh, pretty woman, crying, in dreams. He was unlike anyone before or since. Roy Orbison rests at Westwood Village Memorial Park in Los Angeles, California, in a grave that his family chose to leave completely unmarked. No headstone, no name, just a quiet plot in a famous cemetery, which somehow feels exactly right for a man who was always a beautiful mystery. Eddie Cochran. Before punk rock, before grunge, before every generation of teenagers who ever felt misunderstood, there was Eddie Cochran with Summertime Blues. He was 21 years old and already sounded like a force of nature. Then on April 17, 1960, a taxi carrying Eddie, Gene Vincent, and Sharon Shealy crashed on a road outside Bath, England. Eddie Cochran did not survive. He rests at Forest Lawn Cemetery in Cypress, California, buried beside his parents. Across the Atlantic in England, fans still visit the crash site every single year to pay their respects. Gene Vincent, Big Bopper, 5 words that launched one of the most electrifying careers in rock and roll history. Gene Vincent was dangerous-looking, leather-clad, and impossibly cool long before anyone else thought to be. He survived the same taxi crash that killed Eddie Cochran in England, but the injuries never fully healed and haunted the rest of his life. Gene Vincent passed away in 1971 at just 36 years old. He rests at Eternal Valley Memorial Park in Newhall, California, a pioneer who never got quite the recognition in America that Europe gave him so freely. Bill Haley. Before Elvis was on television, before Buddy Holly was in a studio, Bill Haley and his Comets released Rock Around the Clock in 1954, and the world heard rock and roll for the very first time. It was the spark that lit everything. He was not the coolest or the youngest, but he was first, and first matters. Bill Haley rests at Oakwood Memorial Park in Harlingen, Texas, a modest grave for the man who fired the opening shot of a musical revolution that is still echoing 70 years later. Carl Perkins. He wrote Blue Suede Shoes before Elvis recorded it. Let that sink in. Carl Perkins wrote that song sitting at a kitchen table, and it became one of the most famous recordings in history, just not by him. He never quite got the fame he deserved, but every serious musician knew exactly who he was. Johnny Cash was his best friend. The Beatles covered his songs. Carl Perkins rests at Ridgecrest Cemetery in Jackson, Tennessee, the same Tennessee soil that gave him his guitar, his voice, and his beautiful unsung greatness. Bo Diddley. He built his first guitar out of a cigar box and a broomstick handle as a child and never looked back. Bo Diddley was raw, original, and completely himself at a time when that took real courage. He rests at Laurel Hill Cemetery in Archer, Florida, a simple, quiet resting place for a man whose rhythm is still pulsing through music being made right now today. People talk about great singers, and then there is Sam Cooke, the category above great. You send me. A change is going to come. Wonderful world. He had a voice that made you believe everything was going to be all right. He was also the first major black artist to own his masters and build his own record label. A businessman as visionary as he was talented. Sam Cooke was shot and killed in Los Angeles in December 1964 at just 33 years old. He rests at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. Clyde McPhatter. Here is a name that deserves to be spoken louder than it usually is. Clyde McPhatter founded the Drifters, mentored countless artists, and sang with a passion that could fill any room he walked into. Money Honey, Without Love, A Lover's Question. He was one of the true architects of rhythm and blues and soul music, and yet history has not always given him his full credit. Clyde McPhatter rests at George Washington Memorial Park in Paramus, New Jersey. Visit his grave and remember, you are standing at the birthplace of an entire genre. Bobby Darin. He recorded Splish Splash at 21 and Mac the Knife at 23. By the time he was 25, the whole world was watching. Bobby Darin was a singer, a songwriter, an actor, and one of the most genuinely talented people rock and roll ever produced. He died after heart surgery in December 1973 at just 37 years old. And in a final act of extraordinary generosity, Bobby Darin donated his entire body to UCLA Medical Center for medical research. There is no grave to visit. His monument is every song he ever recorded. Conway Twitty. In 1958, a young man named Harold Jenkins changed his name by pointing at two cities on a map: Conway, Arkansas, and Twitty, Texas. And Conway Twitty was born. It's Only Make Believe went to #1 that same year and launched one of the most remarkable careers in the history of American music. He went on to have more #1 hits than any artist in country music history. Conway Twitty rests at Sumner Memorial Park near Nashville, Tennessee, the music city that became his home and the city that still celebrates everything he gave to it. Bobby Rydell. Philadelphia had a way of producing teen idols in the late 1950s, and Bobby Rydell was the golden one. Wild One. Volare. We Got Love. He had the looks, the voice, and the charm that made every teenager in America feel something. He was also the inspiration behind the character Bobby in the musical Grease, which means his legacy quietly lives inside one of the most beloved films ever made. Bobby Rydell rests at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery in Cheltenham Township, Pennsylvania, not far from the city that first fell in love with him. Frankie Lyman. He was 13 years old when he recorded Why Do Fools Fall in Love, and it went straight to the top of the charts. 13 years old. Frankie Lyman was not just a child star. He was a genuine musical prodigy whose voice carried a wisdom far beyond his age. Tragically, he struggled with addiction and died of a heroin overdose in 1968 at just 25 years old. Frankie Lyman rests at St. Raymond's Cemetery in the Bronx, New York. Ricky Nelson. He grew up on television in front of millions of American families, and then surprised everyone by becoming a genuinely brilliant rock and roll musician. Hello, Mary Lou Garden Party. Traveling man Ricky Nelson never chased trends. He just played music he believed in, which is rarer than it sounds. On New Year's Eve 1985, he died in a plane crash while traveling to a concert. He was 45 years old. Ricky Nelson rests at Forest Lawn Hollywood Hills Cemetery in Los Angeles, a city that watched him grow up and never stopped rooting for him. Duane Eddy. Most guitarists sing. Duane Eddy let his guitar do all the talking. That low, deep, twangy sound he created on Rebel Rouser and Peter Gunn was so original that the Beatles, Paul Simon, and a generation of musicians instantly recognized it as something completely new. He called it the twang, and it became one of the most imitated sounds in rock history. Duane Eddy passed away in April 2024 at 86 years old. Patsy Cline. She recorded Crazy in 1961 and made every person who ever heard it feel like she was singing directly to them. That is the rare gift Patsy Cline carried, an ability to make the personal feel universal. She was breaking every barrier that existed for women in country music when a plane crash took her life on March 5, 1963, at just 30 years old. Patsy Cline rests at Shenandoah Memorial Park in Winchester, Virginia. Fans have been leaving pennies on her grave for decades. A quiet, beautiful tradition that says everything words cannot. We have many more legends to visit, many more stories to tell, and many more resting places that deserve to be seen and remembered. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a tribute like this one.